Hello, everybody. It's good to be here. Thanks for showing up. Good to see everybody. Hey, Felgon and Murren and Dorkish and everybody else on the list there that's been hanging out in chat. We're gonna pass our continuation of the landmark 1 year anniversary celebration over to legendary neurotoxin to be our leader for the show today. So thanks for showing up, Neuro. Take it away.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this 1 year anniversary episode of TheoryForge. This is a monumental occasion here. We are right up on the 1 year anniversary of Landmark, the game that brought us all together. In fact, I got to bring it back a little bit here. Before we knew it as EverQuest Next Landmark, as it was first announced and released to us at SOE Live 2013, we have come a long way from there. Just so much has happened. It's been a fantastic time, and I want to do a little round table here just for everyone to kind of say hello, introduce yourselves, and tell us about when you got into Landmark and what was the thing that really got you interested. So, I don't even know where to start. Let's go clockwise from Velix.
Hello, everybody. Another great show. Thank you all for coming. I am really excited about this show because it being one complete year. I talked about it a lot in my article this week. I write for EQ Hammer and 10tonhammer.com, and it's been a mixed bag. There's been so much. It's the early access like everything that happens in early access is really, it's a process and it's rough. It's not something that this is my first one, so it's a totally new rodeo for me. I haven't been in this type of a situation before, and I have had a great experience. My article says a lot about it. But just as a quick kind of overview of what I've thought of, the initial whole experience so far is just, the game itself isn't quite everything that I thought it would be, but seeing all the community come together and seeing the actual, the things that I want in an MMO happening with the community outside the game is phenomenal. And, if that's any indication of what, the complete experience is going to be like when we get there, I'm really excited. So, it's been this weird transfer for me. So,
yeah, very, very cool. Awesome. So, how about you then, Poro?
So I was not really into SOE stuff until fairly recently. I knew about EverQuest and stuff, but I never tried to play it. I didn't know it was free either. So last summer, when I was in, the summer before the last one, I guess, when I was in Arizona with my friend, he was showing me this thing that had just come from SOE Live 2013, where it was showing, like, building stuff, and they were claiming, like, oh, you're going to be able to build stuff that looks so cool, and there's going to be this world where everybody gets to take a piece of it. It's not instanced. And, like, build stuff. And I was like, they can't do that. Like, I was immediately like, no, this isn't going to happen. Because, like, how would you have space for everybody? And, like, how would you have building tools to make stuff look good? And I was like, this is dumb. But then I started following it, so I found out when it was going into alpha and stuff. And I did not have, $60 to drop to get into alpha. Then my birthday happened, and my mom was like, what do you want for your birthday? And I was like, well, you can get me this game. And she was like, okay. So I finally got into alpha in, like, early March, which was at, like, the tail end of alpha. And I built a little lean-to, and I put my crafting stations in it. And then I made a little secret cave under a tree. And I dug lots of holes, and it was good. But even at that stage where there wasn't really that much we could do, there was, like, no friends list, I still could see the potential, and I thought it was going to be awesome. And I started getting involved with the streaming community, which was a lot of fun. That was, like, the best part of it for me. And I met Reese, and I met the rest of you guys. And I started posting on the forums way too much, and it was all a lot of fun. So that's how I started.
Yeah, absolutely. It was awesome. Oh, Phantom X, Echo time.
Yeah, hopefully no echo. Yeah, I started back 1999, EverQuest. My first online game experience. I actually started once news started trickling out about EverQuest Next 2010. That's where I sort of galloped alongside, and then Landmark came out of nowhere. So I've been following along with it. This has actually been an interesting experience. You know, as a gamer, I never really got too socially active, and then kind of fell into EQ Nexus and started meeting a lot of great people. Things like this show, this is definitely the most interest and most involvement I've ever taken in a game, and happy to keep doing so.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. And Diggs, how about you?
Let's see. So I got turned on to EverQuest originally by Jens Andersen, who's now the creative director of DCUO, back in the day when we both worked at Activision. But last year was 2014. 2013, I was playing Neverwinter Online, and had already been burned out by WoW because it's the same endgame treadmill that I didn't want to have to redo. And I had just hit the endgame wall with Neverwinter Online around end of July of 2013. And I was saying to people months earlier that for World of Warcraft, they're going to have to do something different to get me back. They aren't going to be able to just do another expansion that's basically the same thing. They're going to have to make some kind of EverQuest 2 that's even more different than what EverQuest 2 is to EverQuest. And right around that time, I decided to check in to see what was happening with EverQuest Next. I hadn't been following it. I knew that they were doing something with it, but I decided to Google to see what was happening, and I saw YouTube of SOE Live 2013 EQ Next debut, and I was watching that thinking, who is this guy? He sounds familiar. He looks familiar. Where do I know him? Why do I know? Oh, that's Dave Jortson, who I used to work with at Activision. And then I listened to the spiel, and I mean, that's just everything for EverQuest Next that I was trying to get across that World of Warcraft would have to do to get me back. It has to be a real next generation game that's not doing an end game, that players can really change the world and the storyline. And then there's Landmark, and you know, Landmark is the little sister of EQ Next. So you know, a lot of stuff that we're getting there, we're going to be able to get in Landmark, and I'm really looking forward to the genre agnostic aspects of it, where we can get some sci-fi in an MMORPG. That should be a lot of fun.
Awesome. So before I give an answer, there's a question I saw there that I want to give an answer to about how do you grow an amazing beard, and favorite feature in Landmark. Favorite feature in Landmark we'll jump back to later, but an amazing beard like this, the secret is throw your razors away. Throw all your razors away. Throw your beard trimmers away. You don't need them. To grow a beard, you don't need them. That's it. Also, don't fight against any lawnmowers. That also helps. So for me, I got in. Day one of Trailblazer, early access being available, I threw down $100. I was like, I've seen Player Studio, what it's capable of. I see the vision, the excitement, what this game is going to be capable of. There's a decent chance I'll be able to make back my money and more. Beyond that, something that I really enjoy, something that I actually see just tons and tons and tons of potential in, and if they're able to do everything that they want to, will be amazing. That was my thought, you know, back then, and honestly, I'm not disappointed whatsoever. They've done a fantastic job. I've had really fun times through alpha, through, you know, we're 40 something weeks into closed beta now, I believe. So we've been playing for quite a while and really doing a lot with the game. Just massive, amazing stuff, helping them learn about the game, learn about stuff in the engine, what's really capable, as well as getting cues from us for what we want, what us builders, what us players want to see in the game, you know, how we want to see things done. And, when I say something like burled wood, I know some people's hands just freeze up and it's like, no, because back in the day, chopping burled wood was a pain in the ass. So you had to basically click and hold on a tree, through all the strokes, and it took a lot of wood to get the things that you needed them for. So,
I want to jump in if you're wrapping up.
Yep.
So, last year, I keep thinking it was only a year ago. Right after the EQ Next debut in 2013, Phantom X had great posts of info on EQ Nexus, and so that's where we were hanging out at first. Neuro was posting some docs on design docs on EQ Nexus. Phantom X was really keeping us abreast of what was going on there, and then it was just about a year ago today that Neuro and I met in person at the Year of EverQuest debut.
And
whatever
Tobran.
That was, yeah. And Tobran, that was cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. That was the most surprising thing for me is like from the camera and everything, I thought he was only like 5 foot something, like kind of a medium shorter kind of dude. No, he's just like 6 foot tall. Like what the, totally distorting the picture with the camera there. I thought he was much shorter, but it was an interesting surprise because I was expecting 5 foot Tobran, not a 6 foot Tobran. It was shocking, but dude's awesome to hang out with. Got to hang out with him again at SOE Live. Awesome dude. And of course, everybody here, you were all at SOE Live, right?
Oh, yes.
That was actually kind of how the show kind of started. TheoryForge itself was a lot of people, met a lot of people. I had talked to Geo, I had talked to Tsagh about, maybe starting up shows. And I know there's a lot of talk between a lot of different people about starting up a talk show. One thing led to another. TheoryForge, over time, it became a little too tough for our man Locke. So, unfortunately, Locke 6 has had to officially bow out from the show. Which, we love the guy and we'd love to have him on, but it just doesn't work out for the time. So, anyway, let's move this back along here. So we're going to skip Noodle Cat for the moment, but come back. We've got a lovely post-it note there. So Geo, how about you? I met you at the landmark or the Year of EverQuest event as well a year ago. That was
I think that we met at the H1Z1.
Was it?
Event.
I thought you were at the.
Nope.
Oh.
I couldn't make that one.
Oh darn. Oh well.
Yeah, right. Well, for me, it was I kind of came into Landmark and EverQuest fresh because I never played EverQuest 1 or 2, and to be honest, like I had only maybe heard of it through playing WoW, and people would always be like, WoW will never be the real EverQuest the way it was back then. And I was like, all right, well, there must be some validity to what they're saying. I mean, maybe, who knows? And so there came a point where, as a live streamer, I had to make a decision. Like, I was playing League of Legends full time, and I was teaching. I was doing a whole bunch of stuff in it, and I wanted to kind of branch out a little bit, try a new game, do something a little bit different. And I was kind of going back and forth between WildStar and ESO because those were the games that were available in the near future, and they were the newest MMOs. And so I did the typical thing that when you find a new MMO is coming out, you watch all the YouTube videos, you listen to the cool brand manager talk and yell at the top of his lungs about all the cool stuff that's going to be happening and coming out. And I was like, oh, these look really boring and exactly like all the other MMOs that I've ever played. And it partly is the whole being jaded thing from being disappointed by every MMO that ever came out after WoW. That's another story, though. Anyway, I watched that video of Dave G at SOE Live, and I practically swooned. Like, I can't tell you the amount of excitement that I had from that YouTube video. And because of that day, seriously, the whole week, I talked about that game to Hannah, my ex-girlfriend, and I was saying like, hey, like this game is going to be amazing. You need to check this out. Listen to this guy. This guy, he's saying the coolest things that I've ever heard anybody say. And so she would always make fun of me because she thought that I had like this man crush on Dave G, but she didn't understand, man. She didn't understand that the things that they promised for EverQuest Next are like truly next gen, like Diggs was saying. So one thing led to another. I see EverQuest Next. I watch a bunch of videos for EverQuest Next. They start mentioning like, hey, well, EverQuest Next is going to be kind of having this precursor or this like other game that's related, Landmark, EverQuest Next Landmark. So just kind of said, you know what, I really want to be a part of what this vision is and what this game is going to be, and I just jumped in and tried to time. I did time my live stream directly into it and just started streaming Landmark. Actually, got invited to the Insider program and went from there. Good stuff.
And Hannah left you for, your crush on Dave G.
Yeah, pretty much.
No,
She
that
couldn't
was
have.
when he went to SOE Live and stayed in my hotel room. That was when that happened.
Ooh.
Dude, I never told her about that. Damn.
Oh, well. All right, then. Tsagh, sending it over to you. Give us your introduction, sir.
Well, I was an EverQuest player in not right at the beginning, but the majority of my EverQuest play was right after Ruins of Kunark was released. So the first EverQuest expansion, the end of '99, beginning of 2000-ish was that, I think. But recently, I'm an MMO player, big MUD player for years, and I've been looking for a home. I'm still looking for that game that, I kind of believe somewhere in the back of my mind that I'll be able to devote my life to a video game like I was able to when I was 19 or 20 and not worried about anything. But I'm just trying to hold on a little bit. And before I got very involved with the EverQuest Next forums, I'd heard just like the initial announcement that there would be an EverQuest Next coming for a while before the SOE Live 2013 information came out, and I was like, all right, now I'm really going to get involved with following. But I've been following a game called Dominus, made by a developer called Pitch Black, that went under in the middle of development. They just they ran out of money for developing the game, and then I was like, oh man, I had my game. It was coming. I was really involved with that. And actually, their last live stream showing it with their like tech tests and everything, I won a T-shirt, and then the day after they sent out the information that said, oh, we're closing down, we're shutting down, we just kind of decided this morning, and they never sent me the T-shirt. So I have a little bit more hope with EverQuest Next. And when I got the email saying that you could for $100 get a Trailblazer pack on December 31st, 2013, I bought one the next day. I did not hesitate on jumping into this, and I feel like I put more time into Landmark than any game I've played in the last 10 years, probably. So, definitely worth every penny.
Yeah, I would say since WoW, I don't think I'd put 200 hours into more than 3 games total until Landmark, and that was like Warframe, Torchlight 2, and of course PlanetSide 1, which I played the hell out of. So this was the first game that I really have spent this much time in a long time. I'm definitely right there with you on that. Now, joining us finally, we have the awesome and wonderful Noodlecat. Noodlecat, why don't you give everybody a little bit of an introduction to how you got into Landmark and, your background with all this stuff.
Not a problem. And I apologize, guys, that I was a little bit late. My work went overtime way more than intended, so...
Extra pay!
Yes, extra pay, so it's always good. But I heard about Landmark. I don't exactly remember when or how, because I wasn't an EQ player, but I heard about it somehow before it came out. And as soon as I did hear about it, I was like, well, I need this game because I'm an artist, and this game revolves around art and creativity. And I think I missed one day of alpha. I missed the day all the servers were down repeatedly on launch because I didn't know that it had launched. 'Cause I think they launched early, didn't they? A little bit. Something like that.
A little.
But yeah, that's pretty much how I got into it. Was I bought the Trailblazer pack because I knew this was something that I wanted to be a huge part of, and it consumed my life for many, 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 many months. I took a little bit of a break after the Landmark contest, though, because that was pretty intense 80-hour weeks working on that thing. So that's about it.
Very cool. All right, so that's a little bit from everybody. So, you know, it's this is a year of Landmark that we've been able to play. It was initially EverQuest Next Landmark, and it was just such an interesting thing to me that, you know, the entire perception of the game basically had to change, and it came in the form of a rebranding, or maybe it was the reverse. It was that the rebranding came, and then after that point, it was required that everybody kind of change the perception of the game to be more in line with maybe what Dave was originally intending for it. So, to that extent, anybody, just feel free to jump in. Do you feel like... Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's one thing that was a big part in covering the game over from EQ Hammer. Myself and fellow staffers, the people that know Shaylin, was big in the community early on when she was with the EQ Hammer. You know, that was one of our big things, because being like really hardcore EverQuest players, the original, she played a lot of EverQuest too. I kind of skipped over that one, but seeing that EverQuest Next Landmark and then getting in, you know, getting really excited, seeing a lot of stuff that's going to be in EverQuest Next, but then it was so different. And they told us what it was going to be, you know, before time, but you get all these, you know, preconceptions, and it was really this weird, it created this kind of weird situation. People would come into the game and they didn't really know what to expect. And also it being, you know, so early in the alpha kind of state that, you know, it didn't have a whole lot to really direct people as to what the game was at that time. So, like, the game people are seeing now is, like, dramatically different than the first days of alpha. So that whole period in time, I think with our traffic, that was the #1 question that was being searched anywhere on our fan site, and what we were seeing in Google hit was, what is Landmark, as far as it relates to Landmark. So, and I think that name was a confusion, and I think the developers, you know, were savvy. They picked up on that really quick, and they realized they had to make that kind of rebranding change. So that was a very positive sign to see, you know, them taking big changes immediately, because I really did feel like that was kind of holding Landmark back a little bit. And also too, for people that are hardcore EverQuest players, a lot of players were kind of jaded by the fact that they came in and they're like expecting more EverQuest Next related stuff, and it's not EverQuest Next related really at all. So there was a lot of people that, you know, were kind of upset. They weren't vocal about it, but you could sense the kind of the tension maybe in the community over there. So, but yeah, that's kind of one thing I noticed writing and covering it. But I'm glad that they made that change as early as they did.
It was definitely an interesting thing. It came at an interesting time, and I still have yet to you know, really ask Omid one-on-one like how he felt about it, and you know, that because I'm sure it was a really big deal while he was brand manager at the time. I know there was a lot of stuff that he probably wanted to do maybe in a different way or a different order, and it was like, well, when we want to call it Landmark, it's still called EverQuest Next Landmark. When's going to be the best time to do it? Let's keep the name EverQuest Next associated with it through alpha. People will still be encouraged to buy the Trailblazers and the packs to get in on early access, and you know, people will get a chance to play it and understand it. Echo Phantom X. Get a chance to play it and understand it before actually changing the name on it. So instead of it being this full break that day one it's a sandbox game that, you know, has no tie or name or association with EverQuest Next, that would probably throw people off a little bit from SOE Live, that instead it kept the name, it kept the consistency until it was an appropriate time to finally break it off and really reveal that no, it is actually its own separate standalone product. It just happens to have a lot of influence with EverQuest Next because same systems being developed there, and a lot of the tools and models that we're seeing from EverQuest Next we're seeing in Landmark, especially early on. It was all basically, it looked like early EverQuest Next models. So anybody else, any thoughts on the change to Landmark from EverQuest Next Landmark?
Am I echoing?
You're good now.
All right. Everything you guys just said, but also I think once they saw the power that the players had to create all sorts of different worlds, you sort of had to disconnect it from just EverQuest, because I think they saw the power of it being able to grow into so much more and so many other different types of genres and games that you just, I think by necessity, just had to distance it, just to allow that creativity to kind of thrive on its own.
It doesn't seem to me like anything changed. Just they got rid of the name, and fewer people are asking what the difference is between Landmark and EQ Next, and fewer people are jumping into Landmark thinking they're getting EQ Next.
Yeah.
I still see a couple of questions every once in a while of, you know, is this EverQuest Next? So, you know,
you have to think, like, if somebody came into the game through an avenue that incorporated EverQuest Next in its title, or like referenced EverQuest Next in association with Landmark, it totally makes sense why somebody would consider, or at least wonder if they're connected at all. I mean, and that was the biggest issue in the beginning, why you saw that. So now that they removed it from the title, and probably now that you're seeing in general more shows, well, I guess not like ours, because we reference EverQuest Next all the time, but there are more specific situations where, like, you have people who only care and only talk about Landmark and don't really ever dive into the concept of EverQuest Next, or the speculation about what the game is going to be like, and it's all about Landmark. And so because that's another big reason why the separation, and the more that we see it separated, the less we'll see it, like you said. But then again, we probably will always have some people who do come to it through EverQuest Next, through the old videos that Dave G put out, or through whatever it is that they put out, and they might still come into it being like, hey, like, how is this connected at all, if it is?
I think that's one of the things that's, some of the mystery with this game, and some of the unique problem it has, because I don't think Landmark would ever exist if they hadn't have chosen to take some drastic new avenues and innovate with EverQuest Next. And really, this game became, they were building the tools for EverQuest Next, and they're like, we can make a game out of this. It was this game that just kind of emerged out of another project. So I think that there's always going to be that connection, just because of the purpose it served and its origin. Like, there's always going to be this EverQuest Next to it, this facet of it. So it's always a really interesting thing, because there's not a lot of other companies that would have been in this process and been like, let's make a game out of this. It could have been in a drive to push the next game. They could have said, hey, maybe we'll do that later. But it's really amazing that they chose this. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it, I guess. I mean, they chose to, when they discovered this, like, let's make a game out of this, and let's let the players help us make the game we want to make better. And I think that's what really kind of sparked a lot of our passion for Landmark early on, for people that whether they just want to be in Landmark for Landmark, or whether they want to be, seeing EverQuest Next happen. Like, that was so much of the passion for me anyways, and I think that I'm not alone in that. I think a lot of people here, even on this show, can probably agree that, just the fact that the developers are saying, hey, come in and help us build a game. I mean, where do you hear that before? It was pretty amazing.
I think if I were to have done the naming and been in charge of the changing, I would have not changed the name. Because what I would have done instead of separating out Landmark as something special or different, I would have wanted to change the consumer perception of what EverQuest meant moving on to mean that an EverQuest game had these features, and to disassociate the EverQuest brand from being a Norath-driven game. So one of the things building this engine and spending all of the time on getting all of the pieces together does is it allows them to work on multiple genre development projects and multiple different types of games, but that EverQuest could become something different. Like, we could have some Western MMO that is some name an EverQuest game. You know, I would have moved. I really liked, and that's what I kind of thought was coming with calling it EverQuest Next Landmark. I was thinking that they were going to EverQuest Next is this like real powerful thing that means more than just a game. It means this collection of things that are inherently special because they have these core features of something that makes it EverQuest Next. And then you look back and say, hey, remember when EverQuest just meant like EQ1 and EQ2 and these like traditional MMO RPGs? Like, now EverQuest it's like its own genre. You know, I don't like the separation. I understand that at the time there was a need to make a decision to do something because it's the developers or the salesperson's problem if consumers aren't understanding the product. And that's where I said that I disagree. Somebody said in chat that like if people don't read what they're buying, it's their fault. No. If you're selling a product, no matter what it is, if you're failing to communicate to potential customers exactly what you're doing, that's your fault. No matter
Wouldn't
what.
it be more complicated? Like, isn't it kind of like a balance between the consumer and the person who's giving the product?
If you're working in sales and if you're developing products and you're trying to sell products, whatever you do, you want to ensure that you're giving the clearest description, and you want to make sure that customers know exactly what they're going to get, and that's your job. If people are disappointed because they thought they were getting something else, that's because you didn't communicate clearly to your customers. No matter what industry you're in, and the change needed to happen because there was some sort of gap in the communication there. So taking EverQuest Next off was a tool to help solve a problem that existed. And go on.
Here's a question. Show of hands. If it was just presented as Landmark, if it had no EverQuest Next association, would you still have bought into it and been as excited? For me, yes. Hell yes. Like, in a heartbeat. I absolutely loved the idea of it, and I was really impressed that SOE was actually giving it a shot. The fact that it was presented first as, here's EverQuest Next, and oh, by the way, here's Landmark, it did kind of give an interesting signal. I mean, I talked to a lot of people that they sounded like they were really excited for even, EverQuest Next Landmark, and then when I talked to them again at SOE Live 2014, they were like, well, I don't know, it's just a builder game. So, a lot of the enthusiasm and stuff partially got kind of pushed away because the name changed. But at the same time, you were kind of saying about, a product being clearly represented, and I think with the name Landmark, the fact that it will potentially, if all goes well, be used to make another game off of it in the future, say War Star Galaxies or something. It's definitely something that it makes sense for it to be Landmark and not EverQuest Next Landmark, because War Star Galaxies isn't a world of Norath. It's something that is not owned by a Lucas property or a Disney property. So, I guess last thoughts. Was there anything, Poro, Noodlecat? I wanted to get any input from either of you. Been, I guess we've been talking a whole lot, but been a few people in particular. Poro?
I was going to disagree with Tsagh, even though I feel like that's a little bit dangerous. Because, like, people, when they're going to consume something, now they're doing it on the internet, and they have some control over what they're actually going to look at. So if the person doesn't have that much of an attention span or just doesn't care that much, and all they see is, like, the logo, and it says, like, EverQuest Next, Landmark, and they don't read the rest of it, and they just assume what it's going to be, I don't think that was your fault for not communicating, because no matter what you tried to communicate, that person was just not going to look at it. Like, if you had a video, they weren't going to watch it, and if you had a text description of what it is before they were able to buy it, they weren't going to read that either. So, like, there's only so much you can communicate when people don't want to pay any attention to what you're trying to communicate anyway. So I don't think you can put all of the blame on them. There might have been, like, they could have done it better, I guess, like communicate what Landmark was actually about. Although I guess that is really hard because Landmark is weird and no one's ever done it before. And like I was saying in chat, I think they wanted people to understand, like, how it's connected to EverQuest Next, because that part is important. But they also wanted people to understand how it's not. And it's kind of nuanced, and it's hard to get anything across that's nuanced with, like, a small attention span that you have to work with.
Yeah. And then Noodlecat, did you have any thoughts?
I think the branding for Landmark, especially how they started, it's kind of a hard one to deal with, because I mean, people do see a name and they just make assumptions about things. And being someone who's worked in sales and stuff and customer service a lot, and currently am, people don't read stuff. People read stuff and still ignore the things they don't want to read, even if they did read them. So it's hard. It's hard to market something, especially something so abstract as Landmark is. But I think, at least how I felt in Alpha, I mean, it's still connected to EQN easily, because we are working on things for EQN. But I don't even think the devs quite knew exactly where it was going, because it kind of blossomed into something completely different than a lot of the stuff we were presented with back in early Alpha.
Like what?
That's true.
I think it's the same. It's been the same plan all along. What's changed?
Well, it was geared a
Design-wise.
little bit more towards being something to help create EQN while being able to create other things, to something that's turned into, like, this virtual world where we get to play with everything and create our kind of, like, game inception with games within games. And the way they presented it early on was a lot more towards helping them build a new world. Versus,
That should be their new tagline, Noodle. Whatever
I've
you
been
just
trying
said
to get
about
it to
Inception.
catch on for months.
Go
but it
make a
hasn't
game and a
worked
game
yet.
and a game and a game.
So, you actually bring up something there, and this would be a kind of an interesting little transition to kind of touch on for a moment. The idea that Landmark, not just an MMO, not just a sandbox, but a massive multiplayer virtual reality, an MMVR. I think Jeff Butler is one of the folks who references that a lot, and it's kind of an interesting idea. The possibility of being able to add enough content and features for somebody to put on the goggles, put on a headset, maybe some hand detection thing that they can just use to play and interact with the game, and just play Landmark that way until they get so hungry that it's like, oh, okay, I got to stop for a moment. The idea of it being a virtual reality sort of environment above and beyond just being a builder sandbox, it's very intriguing. But I guess the question is, if it's something that's possible, how far out is it at this point, relative to where we're at and relative to what it would take for something to really count as VR?
Further
So-
than people think.
20
Really?
I really
years.
believe that. I mean, when you're talking about at least Landmark, once we get all of the stuff to build all of the content, we have to have enough people there willing to spend the hours to build these things, irregardless if they're selling a player studio or doing whatever with it. And it's going to take time. I mean, all of the people who are builders here, you can spend hours and hours and hours and days and weeks and months building one thing. So it's going to be years before we have, at least I think it will be, before we have a very large amount of diverse content that people can play. Whoop. My cat just fell off the desk.
That's definitely a good point. Yeah, actually, Phantom X, what you said in chat there, you think AR will be more popular than VR. I could actually see an AR type situation being built into Landmark, that somebody is able to create their own augmented reality types of games in the space of Landmark that they can then have their other friends, sign in on and play as they would want to. Like, what's the one, Egress, that Adam plays so much, and it's a big popular one. It's one of the more popular games out there in terms of the augmented reality stuff. So I could definitely see that. Almost feels like one aspect of the development of VR in Landmark is that there's so much to do that someone could even make an augmented reality sort of thing to further, give you stuff to do and run around and play with. Definitely an interesting point there. So that and anything else, I know there's more thoughts on the MMVR stuff. Velix, I saw you nodding your head actually. Oh, so, Phantom X rather. Did you?
I was just say when I mention AR, it's specifically with building. I mean, you can just imagine having some sort of setup where you're actually physically manipulating, voxels and placing them. That sort of stuff to me seems more likely than sitting for 5 hours in a completely shut off world of a VR where you can't find your drink and you can't. Other technical problems that we don't need to discuss here, but that's specifically with Landmark. That's where I mean the manipulation and actually being able to physically sort of move things around. That's where it gets interesting to me.
Well, I'm sure you guys are aware, but the technology has actually, it's more recently it's starting to be understood where we can manipulate the brain to thinking that you're touching something or that you're feeling something or that you're grabbing something based on its actual, like if it was in real life, like this mouse, like I could how its shape is and stuff. They're actually like really getting into and understanding how we can make that with virtual reality, and there's actually a lot of really cool TED Talks that talk about this. And it's really interesting to consider that in combination with Oculus Rift or some sort of all-encompassing visual scenario, and then how a game like Landmark specifically would really flourish in that kind of environment because of its sandboxy nature. And so, I mean, all those things together, I think that this game absolutely, if it can eventually ever get all those really cool features in it, definitely could qualify for what you can consider an MMVR.
We're one step closer to the Matrix.
Little did we know we're already in the Matrix.
It's something I was thinking about. Totally weird tangent. The idea that the Matrix from the Shadowrun series eventually becomes the Matrix in the Matrix movie because it eventually takes over everything. So, yeah, totally obscure. I was thinking about that yesterday. It's like, how would that play out? Are like the magic races not enslaved by the robots or what? Whatever.
But really quick, I actually want to ask you guys about something that I've seen recently. Have you guys seen Microsoft HoloLens?
The HoloLens. Okay, I laughed when I watched it because I remember when I saw the concept video for the Kinect and the concept video for a product. There's like this projector that hooked up and turned your entire living room into the play space. It's like, yeah, it sounds gimmicky, and I don't think it'll execute nearly as cool as it looks in the videos. So, maybe they'll be able to sell some pre-orders and stuff, but I have no confidence in their add-on products at this point.
Confidence.
So our next topic for the day that we were hoping to touch on for everybody here is to give everyone the opportunity to talk about their favorite experience in Landmark over the last year. I'm gonna just start, and then we'll go around. Velix right after me. my favorite experience was that first Layspring Academy event where I was teaching how to use what I was calling at the time the anti-voxels, so like negative space microvoxels. I had like 50 people all there, and back before the tools were really good, and we had to find the weirdest ways to manipulate voxels to accomplish things. NoodleCat here built like an entire claim worth of, I don't know if anyone could even reproduce that stuff now.
Someone did, actually. One guy did. He called me over and he was like, I wanted to show you this. And if you remember Straws, he took a video of my floor that had the anti-voxel tiles from, I think it was actually from that day.
Yeah.
Or at least close to that day. And I came over there and I'm sitting here going, how did someone get this? Like, was this put in a swap meet? I didn't get this to anyone. And he reproduced it by pausing the video, and it took him like a couple hours or something, but he actually reproduced it. I don't even think I could reproduce it.
That's
pretty
awesome.
amazing.
Well, yeah, that was my favorite time in Landmark, definitely. Velix, how about you?
For me, it's so different because I didn't, like I've been bouncing around Landmark, and I honestly, for me, my favorite moments, my favorite memories have been interacting with the community on Twitter. I mean, there's just so many, and there's not like one specific, it's just so many funny things, just a great community in general. If I had to name one moment in-game, I would say after caves went in for the first time, going down into the caves for the first time and seeing them, as a lover of all things Underfoot, Underdark, and Dark Elf Realm, I loved that. And I met up with a few friends, and we started caving and, exploiting, because you couldn't find your way around really early on. I mean, the cave sounding tool is just coming in where we can do that, but you couldn't. So, we were creating blocks and dropping ourselves, clipping through the world, and using our glide belts to just fly around and totally cheat the system. But it was just a fun time because you got to actually have that social experience. You had something in the game for the first time that was like, look at we can do something together. That wasn't building, which, as much as I love building, like, there's other games that I've played, that have building better, like right now. So, but I mean, it's come so far. Like, I love the social interaction, and for me, anything that can create that social interaction when you can have a goal and go adventuring together, exploring, like, that's what I love.
Awesome. All right, keep going along then to you, Poro.
So I have a couple, but I guess I should probably narrow it down to one. So some people here will remember the Landmark Aquarium we were working on. So it started because I had made like some sculptures and I was getting into sculpting and I liked doing it. One of the first things I tried to make in Landmark was a sculpture. And I was like, oh, well, we could just kind of display all of these cool sea creature sculptures and it would be like an aquarium. So Tsagh was working on it a lot and he made it look awesome. I still have all of the templates for this thing. Like, eventually I had school problems and I couldn't like keep going with it, and also people didn't really seem like extremely enthusiastic about sculpting for it, which sculpting is kind of like really, really intense and not all that fun most of the time, so I understand why. But also Andrew helped with it a lot.
A lot of terrain, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of terrain stuff. There were people working on placing down like props of like different plants to make it look like it was underwater, which I thought was awesome looking. And it was really fun to hang out there. And I remember one time I think like Felgon came over and was like looking at my octopus sculpture and stuff, and I was like feeling all special. And I just liked a lot of the community stuff because I had never really had that in any other game. I would have like a temporary like, oh, now I join a guild experience, but none of those people actually like me and we don't do anything meaningful together. So it was fun, and that's probably my favorite thing. There were some other things. Don't think I forgot any of you. Keep that in mind.
Yeah. I put up the big fish from Super Mario Brothers 3, a pixel art version, and the funny thing is, no, it's the Big Bertha fish actually. It looked like a cheap from the. it had a special name. We'll look at that later. But the main thing is that the big large one that would swallow you up whole. When you were far enough, when you were seeing the aquarium from the spire, because it was pretty close to the spire, it actually did look like the small one because just the pixel art kind of lower in resolution at that range, the LOD. So I always thought that was pretty funny. Phantom X, moving it on to you. Your favorite landmark moment.
You know, I don't. For me, I'm different. I'm not a builder. I've said that like I think every show I've been on. So it's been very different for me. For me, it's really been more people, just interaction at this point, getting to know a game community more than I ever have really before. You know, always played with small groups before, but actually getting to be involved with something bigger than just, you know, a group of 5 people has been really fun and really interesting. Everyone knows I'm waiting on next, but so hopefully as things start rolling in, I'll have a new favorite actual in-game moment of Landmark, but definitely at this point it's just getting to meet everyone has been probably the best thing for me.
For sure. I mean, it's been great. Like, you know, I realized Noodlecat, I still haven't met you in person yet, unfortunately, but it'll happen. But yeah, everybody else getting a chance to, you know, meet everybody and, you know, hang out, get to know everybody in game and out of game. It's been really a lot of fun, and it's really helped make the experience of playing the game so unique. So Diggs, how about you then? Favorite landmark moment?
I'm gonna be bad, and I'm gonna say 3 because I liked Layspring. I loved some of those tutorials. I had an experience a few weeks ago in the loot cave where everybody in the loot cave was just running around together. We had these signals, you know, if you find a treasure chest, shoot off your arrows so everybody can come to the same chest. And just that sense of community in game was a lot of fun. But I think my favorite moment in the game was the night before closed beta when all the servers were down and we were waiting. I was jumping between different streamers. We were like, I don't know, it was midnight, 1 o'clock. I don't remember what time the servers actually opened, but we were on for like 3, 4, 5 hours at night, running around trying to figure out, you know, where we were going to get a claim, and hoping to get a claim near the spire. But that was just a lot of fun for community. Everybody staying up until forever. Some people couldn't stay up because they're East Coast and other countries, but that was a fun community moment.
I was East Coast. Screw that, I stayed up.
Dude, I streamed. They said I don't remember how long it was that the servers weren't down, but I was streaming like when they were supposed to come up, and there was like maybe like 8 to 10 hours where I was like, it was craziness of just nothing happening except for just looking over patch notes and shit. Like, yes, it's gonna happen. It's gonna happen in 5 minutes. No, it's not.
Yeah, fun stuff. Oh, so. Damn, for me it's hard to say. Like I want to say meeting people in person at SOE Live, but in terms of in-game, the thing that really did it for me was seeing the textures be 100% rescaled. So the story behind that is I met Felgon at E3 last year, and he was one of the 2 or 3 people manning the landmark booths inside and outside. And I mentioned to him about, well, you know, we still don't have all of the materials necessarily scaled 1 for 1. Like, I can't have my rivets place precisely on voxels. They're all a little bit off, and I'm not really sure why that's going on. So he confirms, like, I didn't know that was a problem. Definitely give me a chance to look at it. And when he did, sure enough, he said, okay, it's definitely a problem. Within a month, everything was rescaled. So to finally go in the game and see, holy crap, everything is finally placing predictably. There's, you know, plus or minus, I believe, a 12 unit difference between all of the materials. So you can make a building and paste it within, you know, a certain wiggle room and know that all of the voxels will line up 1 for 1. all of the blended gem paintings, all of the rivets lining up, everything. That to me was such a big deal because it really meant the quality of our building and what we were able to do and how artistic we could get with everything was finally able to really take off. So for me, that was probably the biggest thing, was seeing, I asked him about it directly. He did it like a beast, just made it happen. All the materials, rescaled them. I think he was also the guy who was involved with getting us the different metal textures too. So I can't remember 100% if that was him or him working with an artist, but whatever. Point is, Felgon got it done. And, when I finally saw it in game, it's like, yes, this is it. This is finally happening. We can finally start doing some stuff that is really going to keep for a long, long time. Even if the tools improve and the stuff kind of looks blocky months down the road, at least we'll know the stuff that we put down will look the same way, years down the road. That was a big deal for me. Anyway, sorry, Poro. So, Noodle Cat, how about you then? Favorite moments in Landmark?
Well, I have two. The fact that I got into alpha and beta pretty much is an experience in and of itself, because I like breaking things, I like bugs, I like the experience of only witnessing something once, like they were showing on the live stream today, the official one. All of those things that they see in-house that we don't see, but even the ones that we see, like, no one will ever understand what burled wood means when they come into the game now. Or prop spawning on your claim for no reason. Things like that. But I think, other than that, the Landmark contest, Landmarks of Landmark contest, not the contest necessarily itself, but the ridiculously long hours that I stayed up with at least probably 15 to 20 other people, all on TeamSpeak, all losing our minds as we tried to create these things, and the weird creative stuff that came out of it and helping each other, it was a cool experience. And one that I haven't quite had since then. Not on that large of a scale.
People who did stuff like that, because I had no patience for it at all.
It was from years and years and years of practice. I didn't have patience for a lot of stuff before either, when I was a kid.
Cool. All right.
Ow.
Whoop.
Oh, sorry.
Griffin aggro. Actually, I guess that's Griffin.
SOE raid boss Griffin, and put him in the deepest cave in Landmark, and just.
My cat would be that end boss in Final Fantasy XI that no one ever beat.
No, that's I think what Griffin is you see the Vorpal bunny just like eviscerating people, and then all of a sudden this cat comes out of nowhere, and the bunny just explodes. It's like, oh crap, that cat is going to destroy us, and it's fast, so you're in trouble. So, Gio, moving it up to you then.
All right. Yeah, I was trying to postpone the question because I just can't think of, out of all the experiences that I have, I can't think of which one was my favorite. But I streamed the game for like at least 3-4 months, like 8 hours a day, and in that time, I guess the things that really stick out the most to me would be like we started something called Mob Life Monday, and it was the concept of it was we're gonna get as many. I just like would go to all the servers and all the different continents and just be like, hey guys, come meet up. We're coming to meet up in this place, and we must have had like 40-50 people there, and we just ran around the entire biomes and just like went into people's claims. They'd be working, we'd just be like, oh, we love your claim, we'd all throw likes to it, then we'd run off to the next one, and we did that for like hours and hours, and it became a weekly thing, and unfortunately as the game started to dwindle a little bit at the time, like that was right before the like that period in time where there were like no one was ever online before combat, and so we started to see it go down, but still like every Mob Life Monday that we had, we would have like 20 or 30 people come, and it was just a fun like everybody else is saying, the thing that makes Landmark so great and so so accessible is the fact that you can log in, not be a builder, and still have something that you can't get in a lot of other games, which is that sense of community. So really, that moment with the community being all together and just rampaging and yelling things in all caps, it was a great time. Right up my alley.
There you go. All right, and I believe Tsagh, you started us off on this one, so that means
Should we just pick a question? I can pick one because we've scrolled off the top. I've got the list here.
Yeah, you've got the master list. I will defer to you for the questioning.
Okay, opening questions. Yay!
It is the questioning.
We should go in a circle and force the next person to answer.
All right,
whatever.
I'm
There
good
you
with
go.
this. Velix is first.
All right.
Great, what did I get myself into?
Stoneglade asked, the first question of the day, Stoneglade asked, so which member is getting the poop shake?
Oh, we're gonna go ahead and give it to Geo. I know he can handle the poop shake, so you're gonna get the poop.
What is a poop shake?
You guys don't know what it is still, right?
I mean, I didn't look it up on the internet and read all the things, so I don't want to get Tsagh. I don't want to play into Tsagh's idea of not reading the full description before I accept this. So, what am I accepting if I accept the poop shake?
You don't get to accept it. I get to assign it. So you get the poop shake. Next question.
All right. I'm taking down this.
Noodle has to tell us what the poop shake is.
Okay.
She's the only one that knows.
I Urban Dictionary'd it, and I don't think that I want the poop
Am I
shake.
the only one that actually watched the live stream? Don't tell me that.
I was.
Yeah,
I came in late.
I was at work.
Very quick. Okay, very quick. The poop shake was, I guess, at the office. They all got milkshakes or whatever, and
They said
there
they
was
made
one,
a design document to convince Terry that they should have milkshakes.
Yeah. But there was one guy who didn't get his milkshake, and it got given away to someone else, and it was because he was in the bathroom for too long. And then someone coined it a poop shake.
They said that he got poop shaked because he was in the bathroom when his shake came. So I guess it's kind of like a verb or an adjective. I don't even know at this point.
Well, whatever you do, do not Urban Dictionary it, because it is much worse on that website. And I do not want whatever is on that website. I'm just saying.
All right, Poro, what is your favorite newest feature in the Landmark?
Oh man.
I don't know. I just read questions.
Okay, so the biggest thing I feel like recently is linking and triggering, even though we don't have conditionals yet. Once we do have conditionals, there's going to be, like, computers inside of Landmark. Just like there is in Minecraft. That's going to be serious. But no, I think that, like, has opened up a lot of stuff now. And I think it's giving people a better idea of the kinds of things we're going to be able to make later, where it's not just like, oh, that is a pretty thing. It's fun. And how, like, later, people who are not that great at making pretty things are still going to be able to make fun things. And I think that that's going to be part of the draw of the game. Like, not everything that's attractive to a player is going to be, like, have all kinds of awesome voxelmancy and be amazing. So I'm glad that a new avenue of creativity is opening up with linking and triggering, even though I haven't really done that much stuff with it. And once we get conditionals, that is gonna like explode, and I am really excited for that.
Yes. Give us once we get conditionals, once we get the ability to control props with movement systems and weapon collision. I'm making Space Invader. You know it's gonna happen.
Yeah, because like for those of you who don't know, every single thing your computer is doing right now as you're watching this is just like comparing numbers, really, right? Like it's the most simple operations ever. It's just doing like billions of them all at once, very quickly.
I have an answer.
So that's why it's going to be so awesome.
Phantom X, go for
Does
it.
anybody know what my answer to that question would be?
Huh.
Combat. I'm not a builder.
Fair
I can go kill something.
enough.
I'm done.
All right. Next question then.
Next question, is for Phantom X. If you played an old school pen and paper Dungeons and Dragons game, who would be your favorite DM, And
Diggs.
Diggs. Okay. And what character archetype would you play as?
A major healer. It's always been that.
All right,
go.
moving
I don't like to get
on.
dirty.
That was easy.
Stoneblade asked Diggs, do you think classes will have abilities that aren't based on heroic movement, such as lockpicking and searching for traps for rogues? That's the question.
I'm answering that.
I guess so. Unless you want to pass. And
No.
we'll go back to you for the next one.
Yeah, what was the first one? Lockpicking. Lockpicking seems odd. What was the other one?
Disarming traps.
Yeah, I would hope we'd have some form of disarming traps. I hope we have things like track for rangers. Lockpicking. I mean, I guess we could have lockpicking, but that sounds like an odd ability. I can't imagine the animation going along with that. But I'm hoping for things like bluff, intimidate. I want to have diplomacy things. I want to have knowledge language and decipher script. There's all kinds of non-combat stuff that I'd like to see that I hope we get, but they haven't said.
All right.
Um,
Epic sonnet writing was one of the skills I was joking in chat. So next question then.
Next question is, Willikers asked, do you think we're going to be able to customize our characters much more in open beta? Is the gist of the question for Legendary Neurotox.
Yes, they have probably got tons and tons of character creation stuff that they haven't got all of the UI and everything linked up for, but they have the capabilities for, and they probably won't actually worry about it until they know everything that's going to be going into it, and will have a good idea of basically what the what the final set of options we're going to have when open beta starts is going to look like, as well as having any other modular changes and systems and stuff in place to be able to add to it in the future. It's something where they probably had some stock stuff set up that was good enough, and it still is good enough, but I'm sure they've got tons and tons and tons and stuff that they just haven't put in because they don't have the time to implement with all the other things that need to go in. The people that be working on that are working on much bigger and better things right now. So I'm sure we'll get it at some point. I'm really excited for more customization, in fact, but I doubt we're going to be seeing that probably until open beta at the earliest.
All right. Baby Cannon asked Noodle Cat, do you think the availability of EverQuest Next will impact how much time you spend in Landmark in the future, or maybe even how you play Landmark in the future?
That is probably directly proportional to how much my husband likes the combat system. Like I've said before, I play a lot of games mostly because I like to play with other people. So I know a lot of people are going over to EQN. I currently split my time between EQN, WoW, and some other random games. I think EQN will overtake WoW for me, so it'll fill that time slot. So not as much, but I don't know. When it first comes out, I'll be spending probably 12, 14 hours a day in it and not touching Landmark for maybe a week or two. After that, it really depends on what else is going to be put into Landmark for me, at least. And how much stuff there is to do in EQN. It's hard to say until they get at least some form of a build that we can watch or play or see or whatever for EQN.
Geo,
Lay it on
question
me.
for you. What is the prime directive of EverQuest Next? Is it player development, leveling, equipment, questing, or storyline? I don't know. I would just take that as an open-ended question and
Yeah.
take it
Okay.
however you want.
I mean, that's something. Well, the way that the developers have, or the way that I've understood what the developers are saying, is that it is this attempt to make a more immersive, like we've talked about, MMVR type game. So it's a combination. I think the most important thing that EverQuest Next can do in accordance to what the devs want, is to have a feeling of being more of a dynamic world that you live inside of. You log in, you play out your story. Every story is unique. You almost live another life through your character. So I think that with that being said, it's the most important thing. And actually, this conversation would almost be the same to every developer. The most important thing, I guess, then is community and building the strong ability for people to come together over whatever features they put in the game, because that is what almost every marketing director for a game will tell you is the most important thing in an MMO is the community. So, but then again, they are the marketing director, so they might tell you anything. Who knows?
I tell you what you want to hear.
So to answer it more simply, I think community is the most important thing, that they're going to be looking to build in EverQuest Next, and do that through probably intense storyline and very accessible ways to interact with people around you.
All right.
Okay.
Question for Tsagh then.
Oh man. Okay, the question.
It's fate.
The question that I got is one that I can't answer. Who here is the biggest EQ1 and EQ2 player from the past? Phantom X?
Phantom X, I
Not
think.
me.
Maybe. I played EQ1, but not 2, so I think Phantom X.
I'm going to
What's the
throw this
question?
question out to whoever will take it.
Could
It
go wake
says-
my husband up.
Assuming you know what the XR models looked like in EQ1 and EQ2, which would you prefer EQ Next models to closer resemble?
I answered this in chat. I said 1.
Okay.
2 actually just looks kind of strange to me. I don't know. The models look nicer just because it's a nicer game. I mean, the graphics are better, but I'm still very much in my thoughts stay in EQ. So.
Yeah, just to jump onto that, I would say too, like EverQuest, if you actually consider the original XR in comparison with all the other crappy models that existed back then, they were pretty cool. They were pretty awesome looking. So it would be nice to see that, aggressive.
I mean, when I see the EQ2 ones, they seem hunched over and just broken as they walk. I don't know how better to put it. For me, definitely the first.
EQ Next for to win. Those are the best things I've ever seen. They're reptilian and non-humanoid. I don't even know why anybody would even ask about the other two.
Well, I'll answer a question now. Another one from Willikers. Do you think we're ever going to get that whole fighting the deities thing like in EQ1? Or are deities going to have a strong presence at all, do you think? If I were to venture a guess, because I completely agree with what Adranian was saying about the real game of EQ Next being constantly working to expand the influence of factions that you choose to support, is what the game will be for me. That I can imagine that demigods or deities or powerful beings will be brought into rallying calls if influence reaches a tipping point in certain situations. But Dave clarified over the last week or so that there will be some real ongoing we're telling the story stuff going on in EverQuest Next, and that there will be developer-driven events. So the way they're building the system, they can add in whatever they want whenever they want to. If say that it's time to really shake up the world in an expansion-like situation, I can see that as being well within the realm of possibility. Let's see, where are we with we're running out of questions. Anybody in chat, if you put brackets around the word question, or even just brackets around a Q, whether you're in the Landmark game chat or in my channel's chat here, the question will be logged and we will get to it as we can.
Someone asked a good question before, but they didn't put the question thing.
Yeah, and I didn't copy it down. Let me see if
I have it, I just pasted it.
Well, when we get to you can answer that question.
It is a good question, though.
So,
That's a very good question.
Velix, Snowman Wilk said, how does still water affect the demeanor of halflings with the Combine? I don't even know what that means. Maybe you do.
Oh, that is like a deep question. Like, I think it's so early for halflings. We don't know anything about them yet. It's so early to speculate because of how much, and just to give people just a tiny bit of context for the layman, like, the lore has been totally rebooted. So there's so much getting rebooted, and what we've seen from EverQuest 1 and 2 to what it looks like now in EverQuest Next, it's so different. I haven't heard anything about Stillwater or anything, and if it's a question coming from the most recent lore book, which was released like today, or actually yesterday evening, I haven't read it yet, so I would say way too early. I don't know. It's a question that we probably can't and shouldn't answer right now.
That's like the perfect person to ask too.
Yeah, I'm trying to be a little bit more selective with who I ask what instead of just going down the list. Poro, did you not want to answer the question that you'd written down?
It's a really hard question.
Well, what's
I
the
feel
question?
like I'm not the person for that.
It's if you had to try and convince someone to buy Landmark, what would you say and why? Is the question.
If I
Geo,
wanted to
go.
convince them to buy Landmark, I would have a real conversation with... I'll answer this and we'll move on. I would have a real conversation with someone explaining what Landmark is and try to find out if it's the right game for them. You know, I think that Landmark's an easy sell to the right person, but it can be... You know, I had a Trailblazer pack and everyone I gave a beta key stopped playing within a day of using it. You know, I have not been able to sell Landmark to anybody, and I've obviously tried. You know, I've been actively involved. Does anybody have a different experience to that?
I think that question's very different when you talk alpha versus now, since we're talking about past. I think it's easier to sell now.
It probably is, with the linking and triggering and
combat, everything.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask though, like, would you reference EverQuest Next at all when you're selling Landmark?
Yeah.
To some degree.
Yeah, because we are still doing things for EQN, and if you're, like, I have a lot of artist friends, and if I wanted them to play with me, that's something that I would easily sell to them as far as a game goes, because that's something they'd be interested in. But I wouldn't sell that to some of my friends who maybe play WoW or other games, because it's not something they would be interested in to do. They're not concept designers, so, and selling something that, you know, in some arbitrary amount of time that we don't know at the present moment in time, there will be other things, doesn't really help the game if they don't like it, and then they go and tell 3 other people or 4 other people who then tell more people that, well, the game doesn't have anything that you'd like right now. Then they forget about it, so.
Yeah.
That's my marketing stance.
You got to be careful though, right? Because I guess
Jerk.
if you look at like in general, just like all media, like you have, let's say, a big company that makes great movies, and then they can make a really crappy movie, and people might even watch that movie just because it was made from that studio. So in this case, I think that using EverQuest Next to promote Landmark is going to be probably your biggest tool, because the name, the brand, all of that stuff that stands behind it will like we talked about before, will, like, some people will just automatically buy in based on that fact. I mean, look at Blizzard, right? Blizzard does that all the time. So
I would say
Heroes?
Ubi actually they can keep on selling Assassin's Creed even though the last one and the last one and the last one come out just like bug fests, like, but they keep on selling, and that's just one example. There's a lot of companies that aren't afraid of releasing a game that's horribly buggy because they made deadlines for arbitrary purposes and then have to stick to them, which means at some point in the project somebody has to come through and cut a few of the features. I actually talked to somebody who pretty much works on every Assassin's Creed, and he said, yeah, that's, at some point they call me in as the guy to wrap up the project. I have to go through the feature list, pick what things we need to cut them, and people aren't happy about it, whatever, we got to get it done.
Well,
So, that's... Go ahead.
I was going to say there's something to be said too about about putting out a game for an established franchise when your only concern is the upfront price. They're not trying to sell subscriptions that retain, and their franchise is established. So as long as they hit the deadline with their next game, people are generally going to buy it without reading reviews for the most part, especially fans of the franchise. So it's not like, that's a totally different beast than something you would run into with an MMO or Landmark or EverQuest Next, where you're looking at your microtransactions and your sustainable income from people that the game has to be good. It can't have a bunch of bugs and stuff like this. It has to be ready, when the time comes. So anyways, that was just my little extra.
All right, next question.
Murren said, who's your favorite co-host?
Who's that one going to? I think Phantom X was next.
No.
Or
Really?
We don't need to really answer that.
Really? You want me to answer that question?
you can pass.
I love you all. Next.
I know.
we're all connected through spirit.
All right. Baby Cannon asked, if you could find someone to make the perfect costume for you, who or what would you most want to cosplay Phantom X?
Really? I
You
have
can
no
pass.
idea.
You can pass it.
The easiest answer for that, actually, who would I want to, I guess? I mean, my name is a comic book character. I guess that would be the easiest answer.
I would just rock the VS tech suit, the tech commander suit. I've actually been thinking of commissioning Da Vinci to make one. I'm still thinking about it. It looks pretty awesome. It covers both the Landmark and the planet side too. And honestly, for the work I do, and I'm not really going to get into that, it almost applies for that too. So be something that looks pretty cool, and have it for all sorts of various things. Maybe even put it on every now and then for one of the talk shows for special events.
I want to answer that because I'm thankful that I can actually make a character that looks like me. I don't have to cosplay. I'm wearing an outfit in game right now that pretty much looks exactly like what I wear normally, and the last outfit I had looks pretty much like what I wear normally. So I can just be myself and be my character in game. That's awesome.
Diggs was actually the model for character design in Landmark. All right, this is a question that I want to go around the table from Adranian. If there was one wish you wanted the devs to grant, what would it be? And let's start with Diggs.
I missed the question. Read it again.
He was too busy admiring his character model.
Diggs just made a dumb wish. It got granted. No more wishes. Moving on to legendary neurotoxin.
There you go.
One wish to have the devs grant for me would probably be put all of the assets that exist from all of the properties that they specifically own into Landmark. That means PlanetSide 2, that means H1Z1, that means the high-res versions of EverQuest 1 and 2 models. As we see the low poly mesh versions, there are higher quality versions that the low poly is made from. So those would be the ones that I would want to have. Even if they aren't Landmark shape, I'm fine with that. That's up to us as builders, as artists, for our discretion to determine the level of detail and level of quality that we want. If I want to make a throwback EQ looking claim and use flat textures and use, things that look more low tech into the 1999 style, I'd love to be able to do that and use the appropriate models to go with it. Likewise, eventually I do want to make full-on PlanetSide 2 style battlefields, bases, etc. And the assets would really help with that. And they're already in the ForgeLight engine. They're already tuned for it. So, that would be pretty big time for me. How about you, Noodle?
Well, would an art job count?
That would be pretty nice.
No, that's a perfect wish.
Actually, I would really like control over the colors and tones and saturations of a lot of the textures. That would be amazing. Not complete control. I know that takes too much data, but like I've talked before on a couple of shows, just a small range would be wonderful. It would make life so much easier. I'm so used to my full color wheel, I can't handle not having more shades.
For sure.
Geo.
All right. Well, there's a difference between a wish that's granted by a genie and a wish that's granted by devs. So I have to imagine the devs are, whatever's in their realm of possibility. Although
he's already limiting himself.
Yeah, I guess I wish that the devs would ask for feedback, but also be more upfront and more in our face about the way that they're giving us the game, because I know I'm really excited, and I do like the fact that we can give input and they take our input, but sometimes I feel lost in this giant sea of ideas, and I wish that the devs would just be like, hey guys, this is what we want to do, this is what we're planning on doing, and we're just gonna tell you this is how it's going to be, and we're going to trust our years and years of game development experience and years of or maybe visions that we've had for what this game is going to be, and this is how it's going to be, as opposed to where I feel now we almost, it's hard to get information sometimes because of how open-ended the game is.
I'll agree with that. My wish, and I know it's not going to happen, and I've said it a billion times, please go back and rethink the idea of claims. I want at least the option of a different server rule set or something to have something other than a non-affecting area dropped in the middle of the open world. I love the building engine. I love the open world stuff. I love it all. We gotta rethink this hardline separation and ownership of the. I hate claims. I hate them. So, and it honestly keeps me from playing the game. That if I felt like what I was building was more interactive with the rest of the world, or was for me more than just a creative outlet, I would probably still be playing Landmark as much as I used to. So that's my wish. Velix.
Mine, actually, it was funny when Noodle brought that up jokingly, because mine would literally be hire me. I would love to work on story for them. I'm so passionate about fiction and writing. I could do some art stuff too. I've got a diverse skill set. I could be a little bit of a jack of all trades, but really, I got the opportunity to tour SOE the studio, Geo was there actually, happened through Geo and Omid and stuff like that, and I was able to kind of sneak in one day on a tour and just seeing the fun they had there and their coffee room and their post-it notes and the stuff you see on Twitter, like they have so much fun. It would be such a great place. It seems like like its own family. I mean, and we got to see that a little bit in the show today. They got to have a lot of fun with it. We got to see some of their overheard in the office tweets. So I mean, it would be fun. And I just love story. I love story for games, especially because, as a writer, as an author, somebody who, likes to get a world out there and something, what can be better than creating a story that people are going to interact with, and explore, not just in their heads individually, but people are going to collaboratively do things inside of your world, take part on behalf of an organization and push different things and push your world around. It's really cool. So that's my wish, or whatever, in the power of the devs, but not entirely likely, but that is my wish.
Poro!
Okay, so I would like to copy and paste part of what Velix just said, because it would be too much work to repeat parts of it, but I'll also say something different because I feel like I should. I've been thinking about this recently, how if you look at the forums, there's such a huge divide between what devs understand, what they're used to, and what they're saying, and what players are saying, because a lot of the players have no idea what job the devs even have, what they're trying to do, like what the vision is. They just see this game, they're trying to give you suggestions to try to make it better, and there's nobody to like get in the middle and talk between them. And I guess part of that job is the community manager. But I wish there was just like one person whose job it is, because community managers do lots of other things. I wish it was one person's job to just sit there and like read the forums and reply to people, because that person would know like from the devs what they want, and then that person would make everybody feel like they're being communicated with and they're being heard. And then if something was like a problem, or lots of people on the forums had a particular sentiment, and that person would go back to the devs and tell them, so that you could kind of fix a little bit of this gap, because people often feel like the devs are trying to screw them over, or don't like them, or don't care about them, and that's obviously not true. And then sometimes players have legitimate problems, but the devs don't understand why it would be a problem because they're so far removed from that perspective. So I wish there was like, they could hire some magical person who would just know all these things and would come and fix it.
A+. That's a great response.
Phantom X, he just said he's giving away an SOE Live loot card.
That question, yeah, I am. I'll get to that. That question is harder for me because I'm really, again, here for next. And quite honestly, they are putting in, I don't know what else I could ask for them. The one thing I guess I would say is what I touched on before is having some form of AR somehow involved in there, being able to support that sort of thing. Maybe they're already planning on doing that, but that's not something we've heard of. So if I had one wish, that would be it for me.
Diggs, we're back to you. I know you used your wish on something stupid, but we'll give you a second chance. The question, GD, is being nice today.
Yeah, it was fine to pass because I don't really have a wish. I do need to turn in my resume too, because I wouldn't mind doing something for that game.
All right, gonna run through a couple real quick questions. Lore question for Velix. Do you think the Combine Embassy got to Otis/Eridan without high magic? Yes or no?
Combine Embassy got to Otis without high magic. From what we know of high magic, I think that, the portal spires are considered high magic, and since Otis, like a lot of the other places, is another world, the only way to get there, I believe, would be through the portal spires. So I think that's a pretty easy one if I'm reading the logic of it, right?
Well, Coralin was saying something about trying to make an alliance with the Erudites, but then realizing that it would probably end up pissing them off because he'd probably try to use magic to influence them, and they would catch on to that and then blow its head off with
Well,
their
I
giant
mean,
heads and their psychic
as
powers.
far as the embassy actually getting there physically, is going to be through the use of the portals. Whether the Erudites like that they're using high magic, or I don't know how that's going to happen, because they haven't really given us a lot.
Morgard says it. The portal to Otis is a special case.
Ah, okay, so there you go. So we have the perfect person in chat here to direct all further lore questions to Morgard.
All right, quick question from Bob Dobb Landmark. Bob Dobb is in the Landmark game channel, but the all hearing question bot picked this up. Will there be fishing poles that summon beer? Say, bring your own beer if you're going fishing. Come on, dumb question. If you're going fishing, bring your own beer. No, I don't know. Anybody have a real answer to that question?
Maybe that's one of the abilities we'll be able to assign once we've got the altars, and we can kind of add and adjust stats to things. That one of the items we can equip in our weapon slot is a fishing pole, and maybe the right click or the E ability summons beer around you, and one of the abilities you just kind of cast out. But to be functional in combat, I'm not sure how that would work. So it would have to be maybe a different sort of thing, like a new tool mechanism to work like that. And I don't know. Maybe it would be beer. Maybe it'd be something else. I don't know. Who knows?
Couldn't you just fish up a sealed beer bottle from some point in time?
There you go.
I mean, they have that kind of stuff all the time in other games.
All right,
Fish up random
Snowman
objects.
Wilk says gnomes or halflings, and why? I've answered this question already. It's gnomes and it's gnomes and it's gnomes. Does anybody have a strong opinion otherwise? If so, keep your mouth shut.
I still don't know what a gnome is. Like, I know there's garden gnomes, and if it's like those, but they cast spells, I don't get it.
I wasn't here, so the question.
But Karen will still eat you.
What are
Yeah.
does anyone even? What is a gnome? I've never heard of them before.
I think
Somebody
they're
in
like
chat
a
before
football.
said somebody said that they're used to punt, like meant for foot.
Or they're a
Cannon
sock
projectiles.
obsession of some sort.
All right. This one goes out to whoever wants it. Omer asks, do you think Landmark is being developed fast enough?
Yes. For me, it is.
Yes.
I'm fine with it. I expected a long development period, honestly, for all of the new things and the culmination of trying to work with a whole community of people. I don't
depends on
expect
how-
things to go fast, honestly. I'm used to you interrupting me, Gio. It's fine.
I thought you were done, but then again, I was. Only
But I have the William Shatner pauses.
Yeah, I know you do.
Go ahead. Go.
I will
No,
get it for you.
I was just gonna say, like, can it really be fast enough? Like, realistically, if I was given another wish and I was like, if I snap my fingers, Landmark will be completed and in front of me, that would be a great thing. But so, is it fast enough? No. But is it expected that it should take longer? Yes, of course. Right? Those are two different things.
I think also there's this unique facet that, this is a game you have a large number of people playing, now, and you want to make sure that it's as optimized as it can be for its current state, that, people are enjoying the experience and that people are able to actually help do what the goal is, which is help make the game better. So it's kind of unique. In H1Z1, the very same thing with that. It came out and they're dedicating the whole first, 2 months, I think, to just like fixing what's currently in the game, to make sure that it runs right so that they can progress in this open development, early access, alpha format that they're kind of, this seems to be their thing. H1Z1, Landmark, EverQuest Next, this is just their, this is what they're choosing to do for the future. So it makes it different. It won't be developed as fast as other games, but at the same time, you're trading off that speed for, actual quantity and quality at the same time. So.
All right. Here's a...
Wait. The only thing that I want faster is those themed armor sets with the Gunslinger and the Wasteland Ranger.
Clint
We can't get
Eastwood.
those
That,
fast
yeah.
enough.
And the one they had on today, what was that one? It had like the giant like half moon thing on the back. That was awesome.
Can I say something
Yeah.
really quick?
Sci-fi and martial sets. Go ahead, Poro.
I think there's a lot of things going on behind the scenes that we just don't know about. So there's the stuff we see in the updates and things, and obviously there's always like bugs being fixed and stuff. But I don't think that gives us an accurate picture of all the progress that's even being made. So I would say that it seems to be going at a fine pace, especially if they want to get player input on things and then actually implement that stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the things we heard when we were there in July for the, forget which campus event that was, but
Block
we
party.
talked to, the block party. Jeff Butler was showing us all kinds of stuff and telling us all kinds of stuff that they have on their computers, and they're like, "Oh, the players don't have that yet?" Because we've had that for a couple of months. They don't even remember
No,
all the stuff
okay.
we don't have.
I think the thing he was showing us was the voxel brushes that just weren't in the game. Some super complex brushes that gave some really gnarly shapes, and they were even scalable to a 1 voxel size. It was some Klug melting stuff going on in there, and it's like, yeah, we've got them, but we haven't put them in. I'm wondering if that's something that maybe was in the works with the voxel farm stuff, and they decided to go with different would it be grammars or definitions or whatever for the brushes and the tools, or what ended up happening, or if that's something that's more exclusive. Those will be some of the things that we actually find later down the road, is actually getting brushes for construction off of mobs in the world. Yeah, that sort of stuff for sure. But he was also saying, like, yeah, I can go into the office right now, log on my computer, and walk by a castle. I have things on the roof shooting arrows down at me intelligently. And that was in July. So when they've been saying that the game is like at 60 to 70%, when they're saying that around SOE Live or whatever, and they're saying, I think it's around 70, 80, or 80 to 90 now. I think 70 to 80 is what they were saying. It's there, it's really damn close.
Also, they mentioned in the stream, just Steve Klug mentioning in the stream today, they've got the stuff that they're doing in Voxel Farm. We're seeing these videos come out of Voxel Farm. That stuff is going to come also. So that's kind of what Steve implied today. So
Did he say that in a general fashion?
He basically said if you are following what Voxel Farm is doing, that stuff is coming in the future for Landmark. So I believe they have a lot of that stuff in-house, and they're, getting it ready. Because I don't know, too, if you saw the early alpha videos, like pre-alpha, of some of the tools that look nothing like the select tool, look nothing like what we see it as now. Mm-hmm. Maybe they already have some of those tools in-house that they're trying to get fit to the type of system and experience that they want for Landmark before they release them to us. So, just some food for thought.
Okay, so it's not definitely
trying to work.
Another thing, just to close this off, Terry said something interesting in Landmark Live at the odd time earlier in the week, where a question was asked, and he replied something to the effect of, when we're working on it for EQ Next, it will show up in Landmark, which was the first time that I'd heard that kind of language suggesting that EverQuest Next itself and getting that project done is becoming more of a driving force than let's see what we can get into Landmark right now. And someone can ask a more specific question. We could talk about that further, but it was the first time that I'd heard a question answered with that kind of language. Had anyone else here heard that kind of specifically, like, no, when we get there for EverQuest Next, we'll put it into Landmark, not, well, we're putting it into Landmark so we can build EverQuest Next. It was a reversal of the causality system that we've understood in the past.
Yeah, they mentioned that in the forums, I think, in the blueprints. They were saying that once they close the gameplay loop, then the shift will be starting in January, but they haven't closed the loop yet. Is going to be moving most of the team to focus on EverQuest Next, and then I'll go the opposite direction for adding stuff to Landmark.
I need a volunteer for this. It's a very good question that I've kind of been putting it off from Orage. What is your impression for someone that played Alpha of what Landmark was when you started versus what Landmark is today?
I can answer that pretty easily. What I saw in Alpha was a lot of potential. What I see today is a lot of achieved potential and a lot of potential that still has to go in. It's just been a constant, like, we see the potential, they give it to us. We see more potential, they give it to us. It's a game that really has infinite bounding potential, and the more they give us and the more they put in, the more we see what is possible with it.
The thing I love about this being the anniversary, and when I think about the alpha, that just cracks me up all the time, since I think a month ago I refound the What is Landmark video, and it shows, build a house in 3 minutes. And it's just this block. And it's like, oh, look at what you can do. And then they discovered voxelmancy, and it's just, that's why people don't build anymore. The people who don't build, they're like, oh, I can build a box.
Do you remember that? I think it was Dave had first sent out his pictures of his fort back. I think that was before we actually were allowed in, right? And it was cool to see this structure. But just imagine what it looks like compared to what you have now. It's it's like a Nintendo versus like a Nintendo 64 in many ways.
The EQN video.
Yeah.
The stuff that was being destroyed and that was built in the EQN video. It was good. It was good. It had hooked me. But now it's like, oh, I can think of at least 30 builds that look better than that.
And when I think about the act of that building being destroyed, it's like, that was such an early, tech version of what they've got now. That was it. Honestly, when I think about it, it's basically like just a giant pulverizer on the end of its fist was pretty much what we were seeing, relative to what we saw at SOE Live in 2014, the ability to slice sections off and have them fall on their own. And that's still just the beginning of the system for voxels to be converted to mesh so that they can then have deformations and other things applied to them, which is also kind of tied to the whole, creating our own props, if I'm not mistaken, which we will be seeing at some point, I believe. I'm super excited for that.
All right. Let's, here we go. Bob Dobb asked, again, another question from Bob Dobb. How do you think all loot drops on player-made dungeons should be handled or implemented? I would like to hear a non-neurotoxin answer first, because I know that we're going to get a neurotoxin answer on this. Geo, this is the kind of thing that you'd be good at talking about, right?
Well, I'm good at talking about everything, but I think that this might be something that I'm specifically good at talking about. I'm just kidding, by the way. Nobody laughed at my joke, damn it.
He's not
Right,
kidding.
anyway.
It wasn't a joke. It was just true, and we accept that about you.
All right. Well, all right. So it's a very complicated scenario, right? Because in a world where in a virtual world where you want there to be content that's created by developers, you then need to make sure that there is always a check with what the players are using as far as and what they can give out, because what determines difficulty, what determines the complexity as far as like a puzzle, or what determines how long something should take, and it's like it's going to just be really difficult for them to figure out how to give that out. So the question is, how do you? I guess I would say maybe you want to give people, you want to give like each item like a value. So maybe like a value system where like somebody has to achieve certain, as like some sort of certain difficulty of mob, and then they can add, if they have like a mob that is this much difficult, that costs this much difficulty, then they can put in the item that has this much difficulty rating with it, and then you can throw that would kind of like go well and mesh with the rest of the world, because okay, well, I'm able to complete this custom dungeon with this difficulty. Now I can go and I can complete all world events and all outside, like not player created events that have the same sort of difficulty rating. So essentially, you would have to kind of make a blanket system where there's a rating for for items that players can have, and then that correlates to the item level or the weapon level in the outside world as well. So
Like tiers?
tiers, I think, wouldn't be specific enough. Maybe, I don't know.
I expect
Maybe-
tier 5 loot to give tier 5 mobs to drop tier 5 loot. I think
That's a great idea, actually.
what it's
yeah.
going to be.
Well, that's like how
Well-
World of Warcraft did it, right? They had it so it was like maybe it drops like a generic tier 5 item, and then you can turn it into a vendor, and they can swap it out for something like something of value that you want. So
Now, the question was, it
Depended on how you did it.
was the question referring to, like, I didn't hear the whole question. Was it like individuals, if we create something, like what we're allowed to?
Yeah, I make a
Yeah.
dungeon, you complete it.
Yeah.
How's
That's a
loot
complicated
provided?
question, especially right now, just because two big things. We don't know what an economy is going to be like, and we really don't know what landmark MMO concept is. I mean, until we know exactly what the landmark as a whole means, because then you have to factor in other things like, if you won item X, are you going to be allowed to take it to, claim number 3? We don't know enough to, I think, answer that question, because then you have to also factor in item decay, and how do you not let an economy get overworn, overgrown with item. That's a difficult question. I don't think anyone could answer.
I think the game
interesting, too.
one thing that hurts, that can be like harmful to a landmark in the future, is having so many avenues, having so many sandbox elements, and so much depth and complexity in so many areas. You don't want the game to be over complex for a person first getting in. I think there's a lot to be said for something that's simple and elegant. And I think, once we see the economy come in and we see what type of currency is really used, whether they want to use the ether shards or what have you, I think limiting people's what they can give out on their claims to being something more direct to the economy, like, ether shards or whatever, not necessarily specific items, would go a long way to making the game intuitive, and not creating so many problems for yourself as a developer, trying to balance, a bunch of needless stuff that if you just set, currency limits and people just depending on whatever rating system you have, I don't know, whatever they use, but people say, okay, this is this rating, so it grants you this much money and you can use that for whatever, whether you want to use it, and that's good too, because whether you want to use it as a builder to, get resources for building, whether you want to use it as an adventurer to get items for adventuring, it really creates more fluidity in what each person wants to do in the game.
So, my answer on this is that there should definitely be a differentiation between placed and generated loot. Placed loot should definitely be one of the two options. You have items in your inventory that you specifically provide to people for completing certain parts of it. They get to the chest after beating the boss. They beat the boss by certain conditions, they get 100 ether shards. They beat it by different conditions, they get 250 ether shards and one random recipe from the pile of recipes you put in the chest. Versus generated, that would require a lot more stuff than what we have right now. Checkpoints, challenge objectives, stuff like that. Being actually able to do all the level design stuff we would need to be able to have damage zones, instant death zones, places to limit people from getting to point A to point B. Right now, dynamite will blow through any material. We basically need fully indestructible materials that you can block out a level with. So no matter how much they rough up the area, they can't just do like in Red Faction, where you literally can beat one of the levels by blowing 3 holes in a wall and going from the start to the exit.
That's awesome.
That creates too easy of a situation. People can bypass checkpoints. They can bypass necessary things you've designed, which means they're essentially bypassing the gameplay content just to get to the loot. So it's part of the challenge of, we need the tools to even be able to force people to go certain ways or do things in a certain way. And if we want to have something that's completely open-ended with none of those separations and it's just a free form, solve it however you want, The loot generated would have to be something appropriate to the challenge level, but it's something that I think would really need a lot of time for that claim to generate worthwhile loot. 100 people have done it. They all give it a good rating. Maybe there's consideration that the generated loot will be better than just a few ether shards.
I think the problem that we're going to come into if players are placing loot is the Monty Hall system, where you can give out T5 loot for a T1 dungeon. I mean, I think the devs are going to want to control that by matching T5 and
What's
having
T5
the
loot?
devs.
Yeah, I mean, everything's horizontal, or supposed to
No,
be at
it's
least.
not.
So
No, it's not. I mean, we have adventurer gear, so we know that there's stuff that's more powerful.
well,
that's-
aside from that, but
That's just the
But he
default.
ma-
What do you mean
makes the-
aside from that?
Yeah, but he
We
makes
know that there's a pulverizer that's more powerful than the beginning pulverizer. So there's
either
stuff
I
way,
was
there.
thinking just in terms of armor. But yeah, that is very true.
either way, it's a good point because anybody who played Neverwinter when you actually had the dungeon creator, how many people created a dungeon where you could exploit it to get all the maximum gear? Maybe just I don't know. I look for
That's-
exploits in games as fast as I can because all my brothers are min-maxers. So
Once again, the idea of place versus generated, for someone to actually get generated loot to be dropping of that level of quality, they must have made a monumental thing that the devs themselves have gone through and give their rating on. Anything short of that, if someone wants a tier 5 item and they just did my dungeon, I'll just hand one to them and say, hey, great job, buddy. There's nothing stopping us from doing that.
honestly,
it's going to be. I think they're going to have a system in place so that it's generated for us. If it's T5 content and you're fighting T5 mobs, you're going to get T5 loot. I don't think they're going to allow, because of Neverwinter, I don't think they're going to allow people to create T1 dungeons that they can place T5 loot in.
I honestly think it's going to be tied to the achievement system. I mean, they want to use the achievement system to provide depth to each different branch. Whether you're adventuring, whether you're building. Builders are going to be able to unlock more than 10 claims. I think dungeon creators are going to be able to unlock achievements where they're going to be able to get different loots, and maybe depending on how they unlock things, sets ways in which they apply loot to their dungeon. So I think there's so much more ahead of us. It's probably not quite worth our time to be debating this one so harshly, but
Yeah.
it does bring
Actually-
up some interesting thoughts for the future, because that's really those are the last things that we're really looking at to this full complete game loop that are coming in the hopefully
Well,
near future couple months.
This is different than what I'm about to say is a bit different than what we're talking about, but I just kind of want to know, are you guys okay in general with moving forward into what's going to be a next gen MMO with the same kind of loot system, in the sense I'm going to use an example that I saw recently that I think would be perfect in a next gen game. For example, I played a game called Dragon Age Inquisition. In Dragon Age Inquisition, you can really almost create your own weapon by combining many of the different parts of that you find out in the world to enhance the weapon itself. So what we're talking about, I'm curious if even talking about it is worth it, because maybe the whole system needs achieving weapon or attaining weapons, attaining armor. Maybe that whole system in general just needs a rework, because it's not really that cool when I have a belt of the dragon, but that dude has a belt of the dragon too.
It's definitely going to be nothing that we see right now is anywhere near final system. So
Right.
to that extent, yeah, don't even
We're talking about
worry
potential. That's the question. Really was
Yeah.
was based on potential. So that's
Yeah,
what I was-
on that line, I'm hoping that we'll start seeing that once we get refining and upgrading in, that we'll be able to mix and match essences. We'll be able to, we won't be stuck making the same stuff over and
Yeah.
over. We should be
Well,
able to add 3 essences of lightning plus 2 essences of fire and have a lightning fire sword instead of just a lightning sword. So that's what I'm hoping for.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's definitely stuff, it's coming down the pipe. I think there was maybe a recent blueprint update, so definitely check in there and see where that stuff is at. But it's stuff, that's definitely what they've talked about. They've talked about a whole lot on that subject about the equipment customization. Anyway, let's move on to the next question.
All right, we're gonna probably wrap up. I'm gonna do one more question that I think is
Okay.
a pretty good one, and then we'll start signing off here, unless and there.
Did we want to do an extra half hour since they don't have anything until 8? They don't have any place to go to until 8, I think.
Okay. Well, then we can.
I'm
I
asking.
can keep going. If anybody here does need to step out, that's fine. We can. You
Tsagh,
can go if you need
Tsagh,
to.
there's no place in the world I'd rather be than here with you.
I hear that too much. I mean,
I'd like to be sitting next to him.
not on my lap. All
So
right,
then,
Throckmorton, we have not answered any of his questions yet, and he had a couple. I like this question. How important is the success of EverQuest Next to the industry as a whole? And what other companies do you see trying to do anything different with MMORPGs? I'll start this off a little bit.